and welcome back to northeastern Arkansas. That's a pretty strange place for me to be greeting you from, but that's because I'm on my way to VCF East. Yesterday I left my place pretty early morning, made it to northwestern Arkansas to visit some family, and then this morning I'm going to try and make it all the way to West Virginia, which is a long haul. The GPS says it's currently 12 hours and 24 minutes away, so I've got a lot of driving ahead of me. Then tomorrow we're going to leave from West Virginia to make it all the way to New Jersey, where VCF East is happening, and that should only be about 6 hours, so I'm doing the bulk of the driving today. Now, coming with me is the, of course, Mini Centurion, but unfortunately the Wang Rider couldn't fit. The Mini Centurion itself barely fit. I had about 3 inches that it was sticking out the back, so I had to take the top off. That filled up a lot of extra space inside of here, and well, with that and my luggage for a 2-week trip, there just wasn't room for the Wang Rider. So we'll get the Wang Rider up to a VCF at some point in time, but for this one it's going to primarily be the Mini Centurion. So I've got a ton of driving ahead of me before I can get there and get this thing set up. So there's nothing for it except to just set the cruise control and watch the miles tick on by. So let's go. I'm about 850 miles into the journey, which is excellent news. It means that I'm well past halfway and we're making pretty good progress, but I still have about 7.5 hours to go before I make it to Morgantown, West Virginia, which is where I really want to make it to tonight. That sets me up well for tomorrow so that I can make it to New Jersey with plenty of time to meet some people and take care of some things that I need to in order to get everything prepared for the show that starts on Friday. So we've still got a lot of driving to do. My goal is to get there before midnight, but it's going to be pretty tight because, well, it's getting a little late in the afternoon now, and I'm about to jump time zones. I'm going to go from the Central Time Zone to Eastern Time Zone, so I'm going to lose a full hour, which is going to hurt, but I think we can make it before midnight. So the weather is absolutely beautiful and perfect today. The roads are thankfully very clear, and so we'll just set the cruise control, crank the tunes, and enjoy the drive. We made it here safe and sound. The Mini Centurion made it here safe and sound, and they actually let me come in a little early to get this thing set up, which is epic. Thank you guys so much for that. This would have been a nightmare to try and set up tomorrow when people are moving stuff in because it's incredibly nerve-wracking. I am just a bucket of nerves right now because, well, it sounds like it's on, but I haven't actually loaded the heads yet. I have the heads unplugged and the platter is spun up, but the heads are still locked. I'm doing this so we can spin purge it, try to get as much air out of it as possible, but, well, the moment of truth comes when we actually plug the heads in. It's been doing this for about an hour, so I think it's time to give that a go. All right, heads are plugged in and unlocked, so all we gotta do is hit the start-stop button and pray to the computer gods. So, CRT0 ready. Do a .sta for the status here. We'll do a .dir to read the directory listing of our drive. All files present. and accounted for. The people coming to VCF can use the actual Centurion because it looks like it's working. 1,700 miles, and here it is, all ready for tomorrow. This is going to be a ton of fun. The absolute highlight of day one for me was the YouTubers Roundtable. It was a talk at the end of the day that involved Jerry Ellsworth, Adrian from Adrian's Digital Basement, Fran from Fran Lab, and me. And it was all moderated by Bill Hurd. I felt like a fish out of water because I was around some pretty big superstars, but it was an absolute blast. And it was supposed to be live streamed, however the live stream conked out. But fortunately it was all recorded locally, and VCF will be editing that and putting it up on their YouTube channel. But in the meantime, Fran also recorded it on her cell phone, thankfully. So if you want to check out the full talk, links are down there. Welcome to day two. This is the quietest place I could find, and also tanks. How cool is that? But I was looking for a quiet place because, as you can probably hear, my voice is absolutely thrashed. Yesterday was awesome. People were coming by and checking out the machine. We had it spun up. Everything was working awesome. And then we had the talk from 3 to 5, and it was brilliant. It was so much fun hanging out with Adrian and Jerry and Fran and Bill. And well, after the talk, we kind of all got together and went out and played pinball late into the night. And Jerry mopped the floor with me. So Jerry, if you're watching, I am gonna go hone my skills, and the pinball competition is in full swing. But the result of all that means that I was up far too late screaming and yelling and playing, and my voice is gone. So the rest of this video will probably be voiceover, so that way I don't have to try and strain it too much to talk on camera. Well, I can only enjoy the peace and quiet that tanks offer for so long. So let's get in there, let's spin the Centurion up and let people start playing with it. The Centurion ran all weekend and never missed a beat. It was phenomenal. We had it spun up and down maybe 15 to 20 times, and I would say it probably had somewhere around 12 to 14 hours of uptime on the drive. It was amazing. However, there was some problems. The first was that there was just a lot of unfamiliarity with the system. The Centurion uses very strange syntax to kind of move through all the stuff that's going on inside of it, and that's something that I've familiarized myself with, but a lot of people that were seeing the system for the first time had no clue how to do anything on it. So really the only thing that I could show off that provided any form of familiarity was the general ledger application, which is something that we haven't actually looked at on the channel yet, but well, it's also extremely confusing, and it's meant for accountants. So it was really just kind of lost on all of us. However, a good buddy of mine, Q, showed up and spent some time learning the general ledger application. He learned more in 20 minutes than I've learned in 2 weeks. So I think there's an opportunity here to get Q to teach me a bit about the general ledger application. And that's something we'll dig into a little more as we build up towards doing the full episode on the general ledger application that's going to be coming up in the future. However, for the guests at the show, we often just reverted back to using BASIC. And that's right, the Centurion does have an interpreted and compiled BASIC. It's very strange, but the syntax of BASIC is very standard. But just running BASIC on the Centurion is kind of an injustice. BASIC can run on just about anything, and what makes the Centurion so special is the hardware, and the hardware is set up to do two things really well: mass storage and multi-users. It's hard to demonstrate mass storage at an event, but I think we can demonstrate multi-user capability pretty well if I get another terminal and maybe we write a program that uses both terminals at the same time, maybe something like ASCII Battleship or something like that. That could be really fun. If you have an idea for a good multiplayer game for the Centurion and you have some coding skills, hit me up in the Discord and we can go from there, because I think we can build something really neat for future events. The rest of the show was absolutely epic. The turnout was massive. So here's just a few highlights from the show.
there was a very cool televideo system which was kind of similar in concept to the Centurion, being a multi-user computer. Each terminal is a self-contained Z80 computer, but without local storage. They all talk to a main host that has the storage on it. It was a very cool way of setting up a multi-user computer in an office. Next up, we have Andy Geppert with the Core 64. This is an awesome little board that lets people play with genuine core memory. And well, for reference, here's a giant sheet of core memory. But the Core 64 boards are much smaller and don't have as much storage, but that's actually the point. The idea is to let people experience it. And there's a wonderful interview with Andy over on Hackaday's YouTube channel. I'll put a link to that in the description below. Definitely check it out. Now, there were 2 rooms set up, and in the other room, there was this very cool Altair 8080 with an ADM style terminal. Next to it were some very nice luggables, both running Colossal Cave. And well, I always love seeing a teletype, and this one I believe is a KSR33 since it lacks the punch and reader. Next to that was this beautiful PDP-8A, which I believe is the last non-microprocessor PDP-8, and it was connected to an appropriately cool ADM5 terminal. And of course, there was this very cool 20th anniversary Mac, sometimes called the TAM, which I swear I've seen somewhere. Oh, that's right, it was attached to the absolutely epic Action Retro. That's right, Sean was at this event as well, and he was an absolute joy to talk to. And if you don't know Sean's channel, Action Retro, go check it out. It's awesome. He does some totally normal computing, otherwise known as completely insane computing. I love his channel and watch it pretty religiously. But there were 2 absolute highlights of the show for me. The first was this amazing Altos setup. I haven't ever seen an Altos in person, and this was very cool. It's essentially what the Centurion could have evolved into. It's a mini computer in a desktop size. The name on the front indicates how many terminals can be connected. An 886, for example, allows for up to 8 terminals to be connected. The main box is an 8286 16-bit CPU that runs at 7.5 megahertz, and it has an optional 8287 math coprocessor. It can also support up to 3 megabytes of RAM, a 240 megabyte hard disk, and a 60 megabyte streaming tape, which we can see being loaded right here. It has a dedicated Z80, which is used for I/O, and an 8188 based LAN board. And the main system can actually connect up to any kind of data terminal. So the 3 data terminals that were on display here were just standard data terminals, although they were actually quite fancy compared to the old ads terminals that I use. And each terminal is configurable to a ridiculous level of terminal emulation. And the owner of this amazing setup was demonstrating it and extremely friendly, and it was just a joy to see and use in person. I absolutely loved this machine. But my favorite system at the entire event was John's Model 15 teletype. I'm a bit biased because I know John and he's just an awesome dude, but also I have a Model 14 teletype, and seeing the Model 15 in person was really exciting. It's just a beautiful work of electromechanical art. The entire carriage moves instead of the platen, which is something that's just totally bonkers and you don't see on any other kind of typewriter out there. But what this means is that the selector levers that push on the decoder rings to decode the 5-bit Baudot coming in have to extend the entire length of the page so that the platen can move across them. So you end up with this really wild look. Now, a teletype has a separate receive and transmit portion, and the transmit portion of the Model 15 is identical to the one on the Model 14. When you press a key on the keyboard, there's a collection of decoder bars underneath the keyboard, and there are strange notches cut into them that allow them to push side to side to mechanically create the 5-bit Baudot code that is necessary. And then this kicks off the transmit wheel that spins in a little circle to send that 5 bits out serially. Now, John had this one set up on a local loopback, so the transmit is received again by the same machine, decoded, and ultimately sent up to the hammers to type out whatever it is that you punched in on the keyboard. It operates a bit like connecting the RX and TX on a data terminal. There's no direct connection between the keyboard and the receive portion, but there is an electrical connection, and that electrical connection is sending our 5-bit Baudot. It's awesome. Also, maintenance on this thing is an absolute cinch. Just 2 quick screws and the whole keyboard unit comes right off. Then 2 more quick screws that, again, you can undo by hand, and the receive portion comes right off as well. This is actually somewhat similar to my Model 14, but it actually is, I think, a little easier to do maintenance on the Model 15.
The event finished. It went absolutely wonderful. My voice is finally starting to recover a little bit. It's been about 2 days. You can hear that I still sound very, very, very hoarse, but at least it's not in pain anymore. So that's a marked improvement. I am currently in Pittsburgh with my brother who runs Love It Sundries. It's the first time, embarrassingly, that I've gotten up to see his shop and see his house, and it's been an absolute wonderful time. If you are in the Pittsburgh area, go see my brother's shop. There's a little bit of, he's my brother. I want you guys to support him. But also his shop is just dope. Check out his shop. It is epic. Anyways, we're on the highway right now, and we're going up to see Dave McGuire over at the Large Scale Systems Museum. So this should be pretty epic. There's going to be a lot of really cool stuff there. And hopefully my voice will last long enough to talk to Dave about some of the really cool stuff he has there. So I'm going to pull out the real camera once we get there. And we should get some pretty cool footage of some pretty cool systems. So this is exciting.
The Large Scale Systems Museum, or LSSM, is an absolute must-see for anyone even remotely in the area. Dave is doing unbelievably good work. Most of the systems in the museum are in full working condition. We barely made it 10 feet into the museum before I was completely absorbed with Dave's 1144. We were looking at drives, digging through cards, and we even spun it up. And once spun up, we actually got it connected to HECnet, which is, I believe, a sort of global network for PDPs. It was unbelievable, but it was only one small portion of the museum. The sheer equipment in this place is staggering, like this straight 8 PDP, which interestingly is a lot smaller in person than I was expecting from looking at photos of it. And in traditional deck style, the wire wrapping on the backplane is simultaneously beautiful and terrifying. But everywhere you looked, there were gorgeous pieces of equipment like these terminals, and it was a joy to see a deck writer putting data down onto paper. But it wasn't all deck equipment. This interdata rack was gorgeous and had what looked like Sykes tape drives on it, which were really cool to see in person because Centurion used something similar. There was also a complete Data General Nova system, which looked absolutely stunning with its blue on white color scheme. Sorry, deck guys, I think the DG Nova is a much more attractive system. And then over in another corner, we had this massive IBM hard disk, and next to it was a PDP-8E with some kind of wild tape reader system on it. There were racks of storage, and there was even some Cray equipment hanging around. And actually pertinent to me, he had an FPS system. I had picked up some FPS 100 boards from Mitch down in Houston, but I didn't get the backplane. However, FPS systems were all pretty similar, and while Dave's FPS system is not a 100, I believe it's like an AB120, there might be enough similarities between the two for us to figure out how to build a backplane for the FPS 100 that I have, and that could allow us to build essentially a PDP-11 supercomputer. I'm very excited about that. There was also this very cool Burroughs B80 system, which I know practically nothing about other than it looked very cool. And on the second floor, he had a system that I would absolutely love to tinker with someday, a Heathkit analog computer. Seeing one in person was breathtaking. The LSSM was an amazing trip and is absolutely worth it for anyone in this area.
After an excellent few days here in Pittsburgh, visiting my brother and seeing a very cool old museum, it's time to get back in the car and hit the highway one more time because there's something very cool over in Cincinnati that I want to go see. About a year ago, we found a random Twitter post that looked like it had a complete Centurion Desk System in it. And after some sleuthing, we figured out that it belonged to a school on the north side of Cincinnati. I gave them a ring. They sent me some excellent photos of it, but nothing quite beats getting actually hands-on with the system. And that's what we're gonna do. I talked to Mr. Hall, who has set it up for me to come in and see the system all day tomorrow. So I need to get from Pittsburgh to Cincinnati today. And that's about a 5-hour drive, although looking at the traffic that I am currently stuck in, it might be a little longer than 5 hours. But I am very excited about what lies in store for us tomorrow. So I'm gonna battle my way through this nasty traffic, and next time I see you, we're gonna have a really cool system at our fingertips.
And here it is, a full-on Centurion 200 desk system with ADS Regent 25 terminal. There's also a Centurion branded TI-810 printer hiding off in the corner. This system is actually owned by Butler Tech, a technical high school on the north side of Cincinnati. They have some amazing facilities, and Mr. Hall gave me an excellent tour, but Mr. Hall inherited the Centurion from his predecessor, and no one really knew what it was. That is until I got here. The first step is going to be getting the Hawk drive out, and one of Mr. Hall's students, Valor, is here to help me today, and together we managed to lift the beast of a hard drive out and set it on the table. I really wanted to get it apart to see if there was a head crash on the fixed platter. So after removing a few screws, the top cover comes right off, and that looks like a clean platter. But while I have access, I want to make sure that there's no gunk hanging out on the heads that will cause a crash. So a little alcohol on some printer paper, and we can get any schmutz off the heads right now. After that, we'll go ahead and get the top cover back on to protect from any junk falling in there. And next we need to work on the sector transducer wire on the bottom because it had been sheared off completely. Must have gotten caught in something at some point. So we'll solder in some new wire for it, otherwise the drive won't spin up without that signal coming from the sector transducer. And this is where we came to a halt on the drive. The power supply main power switch is broken, so the power supply has to come completely apart to get to it. And I was rapidly running out of time at this point. So we switched goals to seeing if we could get some life out of the CPU. We'll slide the desk out to get access to the card cage on the bottom. The cage screws had already been removed, so it came out nice and easy. And next, let's pull all the boards out and get a good look at what we're working with. The MUX Disk 1 and Disk 2 cards are the same as my two systems, but the CPU and memory cards are completely different. The memory card is a 32K DRAM card and just the third board that Centurion ever designed in-house. It is a 4-layer board though, which is really pretty rare for Centurion. They mostly stuck to 2-layer boards or multi-wire boards. The CPU is actually a CPU 5 and a very early revision at that. It's two 2-layer boards sandwiched together just like the FFC card, but it also has 2 daughter boards, one for RAM and the other as a jumper configuration. And both of these have an interesting story behind it that we'll get into later. Now, I did throw some electrons at the system, but it was completely lifeless, and the culprit is the bootstrap ROM. 2 pins had completely rusted off, and that would definitely stop it from executing code. So we came to a stop. I was out of time, the bootstrap ROM was dead, and the Hawk drive was not going to spin up. So I spent all day there, and we didn't get the system going, which is a huge shame. This is only the 3rd known Centurion out there, and I would have loved to have seen it get up and start executing some code, particularly if it had a CPU 5 operating system on it, because that's going to be very different from our CPU 6 operating system. So, well, that's how it goes. It was Friday, I had to go home, so we kind of cleaned up and pushed it back into the corner, and, well, that would have been the end of it. If Mr. Hall wasn't an absolute legend. I got to talking with him and he really wants to see this machine come up, and I really want to bring this machine up, so he let me bring the entire card cage home with me. How crazy is that? We have the full CPU 5, Disk 1, Disk 2, MUX card, and memory card in this cage with the shorty backplane, and we're gonna get it going. Oh man, I am so excited about this. Even though I didn't bring the entire desk system home, having this alone is enough, because now we can reverse engineer the entire CPU 5, get a schematic out of it, see how it differs from the CPU 6, and start to bring this system up. We can fix the bootstrap ROM and get it to a D equals prompt. Now, once we get to a D equals prompt, we can't do anything from there because we don't have a CPU 5 operating system, and the CPU 6 OS uses a lot of new opcodes that aren't on the CPU 5. So I really needed to get that Hawk drive going. Except Mr. Hall was a legend yet again, and the Hawk drive had a removable platter in the top of it, which I happen to have right here. And if we look carefully at the back of this, it says Systems Disk. I have no idea what data is on here, but Systems Disk sounds pretty promising. So there could very well be a CPU 5 operating system on this disk. So I am extremely excited about this system because with this disk, if there is an OS on there, we could theoretically build this up into a fully functioning Centurion system just using one of the spare Hawk drives that we have here. Now, once it is fully running, I am gonna send it back up to Butler Tech, and I'll probably go up with it as well, and we'll get that desk system fully restored, the Hawk drive and it running, so that way some young, very smart people can get hands-on with a genuine Centurion and learn what computing was actually like back in the day. I think that opportunity to have this machine at Butler Tech is actually gonna have far more impact than anything I could ever do with it here. So Mr. Hall and everybody at Butler Tech, thank you guys so much. You're gonna see a lot more of this system coming up, and well, I hope you guys are just as excited about it as I am. So that was my entire road trip. You can see I'm now back home safely here in Texas, and it was a trip for sure. It was just, oh, it's so hard to talk about this without getting emotional because I had no idea what to expect going into VCF. It was my first one ever, and I was welcomed as if though I was family. Chris, Doug, Ian, Thomas, Adrian, Bill, Jerry, Fran. There's 100 more names that I don't have time to say them all, but everybody there was absolutely stunning. I have never felt more welcome in a community than I did at VCF. And I just want to thank everybody so much for that. I'll be back next year for sure, but I don't think I'll drive. I think I'll fly because that was like 3,400 miles. So I want to thank you guys so much for watching and joining me on this epic road trip journey that I took. And well, we got a lot of really exciting stuff to come, especially with this CPU 5 Centurion. So I hope you guys stick around for more episodes. And well, thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you then.